special call session of the Board of Trustees of the Spring Independent School District is officially called to order on Saturday, September 9th, 2023, and the time is now 12:32 p.m. Board of Trustees present are Trustee Correa, Trustee Hodges, Trustee Durant, Trustee Jensen, Trustee Newhouse, and Trustee McDaniel. I'd like to ask everyone to turn off or silence their cell phones or any electronic devices. Thank you. I think we had a great year with our auditor. She was able to participate with us in several of our board sessions. We actually added some additional requirements for her that went into consultation. And so I think we have some great action plans underway in collaboration with Dr. Hinojosa and the leadership team around our transcripts, position control, and payroll, right? So really great year. I'm gonna pause and see if either of my two colleagues on that committee wants to add anything.
Well, I appreciate how after she does each audit, she's able to send us a copy of the audit and review. And in our meetings throughout the year, she goes over them with us, make sure that we are getting a good understanding of her report and an understanding of what's happening at the various audits that she's doing, whether it's school audit, whether it's procurement, whether it's transportation, or just who she's auditing. She's very thorough in doing it and sharing it with us. So I appreciate that. And of course, she gave us, like you said, the good year report at the end of the year and has us on calendar for this year, getting started.
I just share the same sentiments. I appreciate the work that SPS did for us and continues to do for us, and keeping us organized and on track, and definitely look forward to this next year.
Thank you. So our next committee is our Board Governance Committee, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jensen.
Okay, it was actually a historic search for me to go back and look at our past meetings. We began the year last year with some bullet items that we were going for, and one was looking at information, communication, and control. Make sure that closed meeting items stay in closed meeting. Open meetings items should be in open meetings, having the public access our meetings, that sort of thing. We were also looking at local, state, national issues, local, state, national advocacy, and one of our main missions is how do we support Spring ISD priorities through our governance committee and going forward. Our objectives are to review and edit local policies as needed locally or required by law, connect Spring ISD priorities to state and national legislative advocacy, and celebrate Spring ISD employees who demonstrate extraordinary leadership. So when I looked back at the past year's agenda items, there are quite a few local policies that we reviewed, and also has been sent us dates that we try to go through, because there's hundreds of them, but we go through these summaries and try to look at some of the ones that look like they have this special interest with the whole board. Jeremy Bingley is one of our regular members, and Dr. Hinojosa is one of our regular members. The other two committee members are Winford, who's probably online watching us right now, and we also have Natasha McDaniel. And one thing I have been excited about this last year is, and our first meeting this year, is we are, I think, going to be able to expand this a little bit. One thing I really am interested in is board governance and Lone Star governance checklist. We should be looking at ourselves and looking at those rating scales and trying to apply our activities into rating ourselves. I scanned some board governance. This is self-governance pamphlets and publications from other school districts that our chief counsel copied off for me. And there is a wide variety. I think that when you get too wordy and too thick, it's no use to people. I really want something that's very readable and accessible. Maybe even a little humor here and there. Yeah. I think there'd be a nice section for us to put in some comments to future board members saying, if I'd known then what I know now, things that I would have done. So I think let's make it a letter to future board members. Okay, I like that. Also, Natasha has been showing some real initiative and leadership and has a couple of wonderful ideas. Would you describe your proposal for student leadership and include it in school governance?
Yes, so, we talked some about this before, but I would like to propose a student governance fellowship pilot, where we have our, starting with high schoolers, but we've also talked about really eventually getting all the way down to kindergarten, because we just want to create students who are leaders, who can advocate for themselves. But when it comes to the pilot, and I'll send you all my initial brainstorm. And so the mission that I have here is just empowering students to value and assert their voices and experiences to advocate for what they seek in the district, and creating actively engaged students in their community. So creating a much smaller than the, what is
student advisory?
Yeah, the student advisory committee. So a diverse group of students, socioeconomic status, backgrounds, discipline records, just all types of students, and getting them involved in policy making and directing their voices heard when it comes to decision making. So the students are the ones who are typically most directly impacted by our policies. And so how can we bring their voice in to the conversation? Creating a process where there's a recruitment process. Initially, we want to make it a low barrier to come in, because you just want to get kids involved. But let me just jump here because I'm going to send you all this. But primary activities could be, but not limited to, participating in school board meetings, including agenda participation and public comment to get their student views, reviewing board meeting agendas and documents to offer insights and feedback from the student lens, representing Spring ISD as student advocates at the Capitol, which we've talked a lot about with state legislators, even proposing and drafting policies based on student experiences. I've reached out to different colleagues across, I know every state is different, but there's colleagues that have very strong student leadership programs. And just really want to get the kids involved in the district, feeling more ownership in the district and using their voices. So that's something that I am proposing to, the committee is giving a nod, but just want to propose it to the team as well. I know Dr. H, of course, we will work hand in hand. And it's not something to where we're trying to have a political science class or anything like that. It's more so collaborative, getting their voices heard and involving them in decision making. Thinking back to the bond process, how we had students who came in and voiced their thoughts and gave us that student lens. So that's essentially the idea of the student governance pilot. Now, it could evolve into where you have fellows who then lead and bring in other students and things of that nature, but I'll just pause there for any thoughts.
May I add that one reason why I was so excited about this was that it includes a spectrum of the students that are there, that they get to say, what kind of courses do I need? Do I want? How do I want to eat my lunch? I don't know, because when I had an opportunity to hear a TED Talk by Ken Robinson, And he was talking about schools that where they had historically very, very low achievement. I found out that when they included kids in on the leadership and what they wanted in their coursework, it turned around to be incredibly high performing. So there's many ways to encourage students to become involved and to exceed. And I think this is just a wonderful idea. So it's going forward, we'll talk about that. The other thing I wanted to talk about is our Employee Excellence Awards. We have had a problem since the pandemic where we do not get an even number of people each month. So I don't think it's feasible to have monthly awards. What I would like to go is fall, winter, and spring, and have 3 months in each thing and have 3 awardings on each one. So that we look at a bigger pool and can assess that. The other thing is, it has been suggested that perhaps we should make sure, like the Academy Awards, everybody knows who was nominated for an Academy Award. And if you were nominated for the awards, maybe you should get a certificate of nominated or some way to recognize. Because this is doing a wonderful job. And so we have set up our meeting dates for the next year, and I'm sure they will all work out, but we're really flexible and make it work. So that's our report.
Thank you. So I'm looking for feedback, comments, and consensus on both of their great proposals they brought forward on the student governance pilot, as well as the board excellence. Would like to-
I think we talked it through.
Oh, you already talked through it.
We talked through it, and as Ms. McDaniel was saying, I have a superintendent advisory committee, and each school sends 5 students. And so, we have 25 students that meet with me on a monthly basis, and it is a variety too. We have students with special needs, students that are in special ed from, their, we had a salutatorian this past year that was in that group. So it is a varied, but we talked about what they would be looking at different. This group looks at policy, like the discipline policy that we revised, that was their input. But they're not really involved in the governance. So we look at discipline policy. They also looked at our engagement school quality survey. And they did the dress code too. Oh my goodness, did they do the dress code? So those are the different projects that they've taken on. And so at the beginning of the year, they determined what they want to look at. And for them, the main thing was discipline and dress code. And I brought them the school quality because by the end of the year, we had data that really supported what they were looking at and data to be able to make the changes. So it's really student driven on their projects, which this is more leadership that we want to develop, and then a cohort of students. So I think we could still, it is teaching them advocacy. In the group that I run right now with this superintendent's group and this group, and it's how do you give them voice? It's every group, like the parent advisory committee that you all presented to. It's how do you give people voice at all different levels.
Since we have, since we have your group and the group, what Natasha is posing, I've been to several workshops throughout our state and national of districts that have done this and are doing this. And so I think it's very feasible and a good idea for us to hear from our students again as well. It's real popular. But I'm thinking that you already have these students identified from each school. It would be nice maybe if we can incorporate that with Natasha's by having, say, 3 or 4 of those students, and we rotate them each month come to, and if you want more, I just thought about maybe, I'm looking at our board, at our room and saying maybe 2 on this side, 2 on that side placement, but be a part of the board and sit up there with the leadership team and with us and be able to express their ideas at a board meeting and be recognized at a board meeting. Of course, not all 25, and I don't know how many you had in mind in terms of how many would serve, but you may be thinking of serving every month, but I was giving the students an opportunity to rotate, so more students could be involved. If we just take maybe 4 each month and 4 this month, and in your meetings, you guys discuss probably what they want to bring to our meetings, and they're the representatives that will speak at that meeting for that month to us.
And I think the rotating is a good idea. Some, you know, everyone's different, but some of the feedback that I've heard from colleagues that have it going at their board is that the kids start to get disengaged after too long. So they would try and do like a 6-month thing. And then they had to end up doing 4 months. And then, you know, the kids at first, they're excited, but then they start getting into school and get into other things. So just making it short term so we can keep their attention, get them engaged while we can, and then, you know.
Maybe even do something like the capstone or an initiative. When they did the dress code, Dr. Watson actually had the students come and sit. He got up and turned the meeting over. You remember? To the student, and yeah, and the student led the meeting, facilitated the meeting, and rolled out the new dress code, and then we voted on it. They presented it to us, and then we voted on it. So we've done something similar,
Okay.
you know, just one time, but
Right.
it can
Going,
piggyback,
going.
right?
It really builds.
And
It's
maybe the
like
kids
the
that you bring in, they nominate, you know, after their little short term, they nominate another person.
That's
to
what
come
we
in
saw at that workshop.
and replace them, so that you have fresh people coming in, fresh kids coming in.
I think for us, they were excited about working on the dress code and the discipline committee, all that. But we just ran out of time to prepare them to come present, which was in a way good because we had a lot of heavy discussion. And I know in my brain, I was thinking, how would the kids have done if we were asking them those questions? But it is important, especially when it's driven by them. You all saw that email from one of the students from Iris that was so excited that we finally did what they wanted. Give us a 1-pager. Like, what are we responsible for? But for them to be able to come and bring it to the board, it takes preparation. And then, of course, we would also be prepared to make sure that we knew the students. But yeah, and I think that's important. And they know the difference. Like when they meet with me, they know I do the umbrella. And they see the board and the North Star goal, but they see the board as governed, like they understand where everything falls. And oh yeah, they know the board. That I like the idea of rotation, and I like the idea of projects, because that's what they want. They want a project they can run all year long, instead of what we were doing. Okay, here was a situation, a case that was brought to us. Oh, vaping was the other piece that they were so concerned about. But it was like short term. But if they could do a project all the way through, it would be good.
Yeah,
But be real,
yeah.
you know, it's not just, you know, lip service.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
They
important.
really-
It's authentic.
Just like Ray has been trying to speak.
Oh, sorry. No, my only thing, as I'm kind of thinking this through, is just to make sure that we're not. If we're trying to include as many variable voices as possible, like the rotation is a good idea, but I still think we need to make sure that we're keeping it open for
Letting all
all the
kids.
kids
For
that
sure.
would like to participate, because sometimes I think we get into these mind frames of, here's our committee, and these are our people, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, others that might want to participate are like, well, they already have the people, so they're not gonna need any more.
You have to
So-
be in this advisory.
Right.
council, or I'm not gonna get picked.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And I'll tell you, they nominate. Because during the summer, I had kids that were seniors that were leaving, they were emailing me. Saying, here's the, you know, and
I saw one of them, I saw one of them.
Nominate somebody else to
Yeah.
replace me.
This is
And
what
I
we should
went
do,
to the
and here's
short
the
term.
person that should.
And
replace
should
me.
be doing it.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yep.
Nathan,
Yeah, let's get.
Any thoughts, Trustee?
No, I was just gonna say that keeping them engaged is definitely the key with that project. And I think a long-term, having projects where they can start at the beginning and have an end result, I think is always beneficial. And I would love to see that have them be more engaged in our board meetings. And when you were talking about it, I thought to myself, I wonder if the students know they can actually attend the board meetings. I don't think we've ever.
They can come speak.
Yeah,
at
and
the-
speak. Yeah, I don't know that there has been a targeted campaign to get their feedback on that level. So I think it's a great idea.
Thank you for the feedback.
Okay, and then on the second part is the Board Excellence Award. I like it, but I just wanna make sure that, I think when we lost participation, getting a lot of applicants, was when we changed the form. And we tried to align the form with our leadership. And it got long and cumbersome, because I had several people tell me I was gonna do it, but that form was too much. So I think we lost people there, so I like the monthly because we're able to touch, right? So I'd hate for us to cut it back because
We're gonna have to
changed the process. Okay,
It's a 3-month, 3-month, 3-month.
Okay.
3 teachers. Well,
Oh, for
not
each
teachers,
one.
3
Okay.
employees.
right.
Each month.
But I
Same
do
amount of
like, I do think we do need that, because I think when I talked to you, we're looking at revising the form. I think we need to make it a little simpler. This
Sure.
kind of complex.
Would there be any consideration doing it at the schools, like having the schools nominate somebody from their school?
Well, they can.
They do.
Now.
No, but I'm saying like, not make them, but,
They can.
but
I don't
like really push for them to have somebody represented every month on their school.
Like
And
at
we-
announcements and stuff, you mean? or-
Yeah, even if they don't make it to the excellence, but at least make it on a list or something that's.
You know that the schools do their recognition. The schools do like teacher assistant of the month,
Mhm.
they do their own little ones. And then they submit to us too, because we will awarded a lot of teachers, custodians.
Mhm. But I mean, getting that out to. the
Getting it out, marketing
broader-
it more, and I think one of the
the
things
broader
that
groups.
I liked about when we instituted it is students can nominate. And I don't know if we've had any students nominated, but parents can nominate. We've had a couple parents nominate some
We're gonna
teachers.
have to slim down that form then.
Yeah, so maybe we need to market it more and let if the student knew they could nominate the teacher, they probably would when they had a
Probably would.
teacher that's gone above and beyond. So maybe we need to market it a little bit more, but
Just like with the honor. company.
yeah, exactly. And I love, certificates for those that were nominated.
Mhm.
I love that.
Sometimes
because,
they don't even know.
yeah, like you could say,
Yeah,
when
don't-
they announced
they
it
don't
at
know
the
they
academy, they said they had 14 nominations and 2 academies, you know, so recognizing those everybody that's nominated. I think it will even spread it, because people may have been nominated and don't even know they got nominated. And we didn't select them, so I love
And for
that.
some, just for them to see that they were nominated, even if they didn't win the actual top award, they're.
And
Somebody
the
recognized
nomination
Yeah.
can be presented by the principal at the campus.
Right,
Right.
right.
So, I like that. It's all right. It looks like that's a nod from the board, and we're all for it. All right, thank you. Do you have anything else? You good? I'm done. All right, so then our next committee is our board equity committee. Check to see. Nope. So I'm gonna turn it over to
We can tag team.
both our trustee McDaniel and Correa.
I know you got better notes than I do. He did give me some, insight into what we wanna look at going forward.
I'll just be
He's
real
not on yet.
fast.
He hasn't texted you yet. He's not on yet. Okay.
So one thing we talked about. Well, that's actually governance, but. It transfers to equity. We talked about how equity has been. It's at the forefront of what we're doing. We did our equity reports, we've got our equity committee, we read our equity statement. And the work is flowing through us. Considering, as the district moves forward, how do we embed equity into policy so that it is solidified within the district? And so I'll send to everyone, I've just collected some sample policies. ALEAF has an educational equity policy. There's some others from around the country. I've seen Baltimore, Cincinnati. I'll send you all the samples, but we were planning to move that over to equity committee to discuss as well, but just how can we bring that into policy?
So the way to do it is to report it out to the body,
Mhm.
and then with the consensus of the body, then we move it over to governance.
Well, we talked about it in governance.
Yeah, you,
And we want to be cautious as not to take 3 board members on a committee to assign something to 3 board members on another committee. We just want to make sure we bring it back, because
Okay.
we're not individuals, we're not 3,
Right.
we're 1.
Mhm.
So just bring it back to the body and make sure that all 7 of us are on board. And then we would direct it over to the committee, right? We don't want to circumvent or break any of.
no.
Yeah, we don't wanna do
Right.
Yeah, and
So
then
then
we're
the
not
governance
operating as
committee-
individuals, right?
Then the governance committee,
Mhm.
so I'll take off my equity hat. Governance hat. I'll send you all the samples to get your input.
Just
then
bring it
go
to the
from
next,
there.
we report out every month. In the board meeting, you got
Okay.
it on your agenda every month. We'll just report it out to the board, ask
Okay.
that we like the board's, consensus to move this over to the governance.
Okay.
Alrighty, a lot of the discussions that we had over this past year centered around equity in the budget. Some of the things that we had talked about was, trying to make sure that we're finding equity down at the student level, and how are our dollars being applied equitably across the district. We had, some of us that participated in the, Edgenomics, the Georgetown Economics, learning about the budgeting process. So we had those conversations. We also talked about the, equity study. And that is kind of leading into what we're wanting to consider for this next year, is going back to that study and taking a look at that, especially in conjunction with the loss of the staff that we've had, principals, the survey that we had, the exit surveys, and tying all of that together to really try to figure out, where we were when we got the study, kind of where we are now since that time, and do we need to consider maybe relooking at doing the study again or something similar. But there's a cost involved, so those are kind of the things that we're proposing that we might want to consider for this.
What I think would really be great is we had that equity study and we broke it down into areas. It would be great to see what we've accomplished.
Right.
In each of those areas.
Right.
What our successes have been and where our opportunities are. And then based on those opportunities, what's our next direction? Is it another equity study, or is it policy? Is it, so once we can get a clearer line of sight to what our outcomes have been from that equity study, because it's been 3 years, we really should be able to break that down and say, here's where our results. There were a lot of findings in that equity study around special ed. And we just saw that we're seeing growth in special ed. So to me, that's an outcome, that's a success. So I think if we looked at it and we started looking at what those findings were, and then what work our administration has taken, put in place, and where those accomplishments are coming. And then when we see where we still have opportunity, we'll say, well, it's still a lot here. Maybe we need to do it again, another study, or maybe that's not what we need to do.
And that kind of.
But that data will let us know what our next direction should be, right?
Right, and that kind of ties into embedding equity into policy.
Mhm.
At that point, maybe there's something that we're missing, and that might help to take care of an opportunity that we have. So.
Is everyone in agreement with breaking it down and identifying our successes and then what the next steps are.
I really think that the data will be able to tell us. I don't know that just doing another equity study, I mean, you can test and test and test and not get any results. So really breaking it down and looking at every single area. The last time I was looking at it, we made a lot of growth in our special education area. We haven't made growth around our staffing, and we haven't made growth around our emergent bilinguals. Those were areas. And then the piece that we made growth on, but you know, Mr. Adams and all of us keep challenging ourselves is how do we know? Because we've made a lot of progress on the training of people. But how do we measure the impact, right? So when we have everybody that's been trained, all the numbers, we have their exit tickets that says, you know, it was beneficial and it's highly, everybody's scoring is really high. But is it, how can we measure the translation into the classrooms? And that's what we have in our strategic plan. All of those pieces are embedded into our strategic plan. So figuring out how we're able to measure that part, right? And then the others, it is, you know, just in numbers that we've been able to track, but that one's a hard one. So I think for the committee to bring it back and put it side by side.
And I think,
to look at that.
and you're right, that one's a little more intangible. It's a little more difficult to measure. But I think using some of the other surveys that we have, like the K-12, the exit surveys from employees who've left, you know, kind of tying all that together, I think would give us a better idea.
And maybe that's our next step. Maybe it's not investment in another equity study, but it's
Right.
investment with analytics. We've got analytics folks that can look at our other data points and see if we can align it to growth around the actions we take.
You know, with the ABL, they'll be able to tell us, because there was a lot of questions around access to courses and higher level courses. So you're right, we're probably gonna be able to
Pull
data
pieces of stuff we've already done
Right, I forgot.
that will give us some equity lens into it, especially K-12. Because we can look at trending in K-12 around something that was cited in that audit and see if it's gone up or down. That's cool.
Let's just insert one
That's
thing.
present.
When we do gender equity programs, RISE, one of the things that we found research is that teachers gave more time to boys than the girls. And all you had to do was have a video and time how much time you was doing. Also, the teachers in our programs had just a real easy way to make sure they were equitable, is that they put every student's name on like a popsicle stick or something, and when they were gonna ask a question, they pull it out and all of the students to make sure that you get calling on everybody. But the other thing is the level of question. With girls, they tend to say, "Oh, you look very cute today," that kind of thing. But with boys, they'd say, "Oh, well, you're almost there. You really got. You're doing intuitively wonderfully here, or you're really making progress." And they always drive the boys with leading questions to hit their performance at a higher level. And that's what I'm really afraid of, especially teachers who may have biases they don't
Implicit
know about,
biases, yeah.
and they may be not challenging a student they should be challenged. But I guess that's going on in the training, right?
But and it is that implicit bias that we have that.
You don't even know
It
you're
is
doing it
unconscious.
sometimes. Yeah, unconscious.
Okay, well, I just say there are, you know, lots of tried and true ways of, and sometimes it was not an administrator coming in and looking, because that's threatening sometimes to a teacher when they're trying to get better, whatever it is. Sometimes teachers would clear out and one would go see the other class on their conference period. And without solutions.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I will now recognize our Community Engagement Committee Chair, Trustee Hodges.
Put these slides together, because I thought that's what you asked us to do. So I'm gonna use my slides.
Okay, go for it.
I can't get back to it. Okay. Share my screen. Let me see what we got here. Okay, so our, okay. So as you know, the Community Engagement Committee, our goal is to partner with the district and key stakeholders to develop and implement opportunities to improve communications and awareness between the district parents and the community. And I want to thank President Durant for giving me the opportunity to head up this committee because I'm very passionate about the community and done a lot of work over the last few years or 15 plus years in my career. So this is really right up my alley, being able to work with the community and work with our stakeholders to really improve our to improve or increase engagement, and then also to kind of change the perception, because I think as a board, we talked about how the community perceives us and how we really have to write our own stories and create our own narrative. And I think we're moving in a positive direction. And some of the things that we did on the Community Engagement Committee this year is really, we can see that by the feedback and by the engagement that we had from the community. So thank you, and thank you to Trustee Correa, who serves as my co-chair on this committee. So the committee will activate using community surveys, public forums, town hall meetings, workshops, and special events. And you can see, looking at some of the activities that we did in 2022, 2023, you know, we know building bridges in our table talks, we got good feedback from that. We really, as a committee, loved the graphic that was put together to kind of surmise the table talks and the building bridges. So we're really looking forward to moving forward with that in 2023, 2024. And we're also, I'll talk about that in a few minutes, how we're going to maybe change that up a little bit if the board is in agreement with that. We also participated in the anti-bullying workshops and the college readiness resource fair. I think the anti-bullying workshop, we didn't have as great a turnout, I think. I didn't attend that one, but Trustee Correa, is that the one where we attended? Did we not have a good turnout? Because I think that's the one where we partnered with, we were partnering with someone else and who was using our facility. So if we have another opportunity to do something like that, I think as a committee, we'll be more engaged in that outreach and making sure that information gets to the families, and then we have some really good participation.
It wasn't our own, we were just trying to partner.
Right.
And, yeah, there was,
And so the financial literacy workshops, that went well, and of course our the safety forum. So here's the one of the flyers from our building bridges that talked about what we were doing and the date and time and everything. So really like that. That was on the website, and they could have the opportunity to register. I think that was a really good graphic. So I'd like to see us you know, continue with that. Building bridges with the board. It was our series, community outreach meetings facilitated by us, and going through that process, there were several topics of discussion that came about from that. And I think as a team of 8, and also with the senior leadership team as well, we identified the areas of great need, and we were able to put a plan in place to move forward and to make some changes in certain areas. Now, of course, you know, there are things that aren't going to happen overnight, but I think the things that we were able to do, we did that, and you can see that, you know, in this graphic. has everyone seen this graphic? Did you all see it on the website?
Mm-hmm.
And so it talks about, the issues that were some of the concerns and topics that came up of discussion. And then I really like the way it was put together to kind of show, how we're addressing those issues and what the plans are. And I think this graphic not only being out there on the website, but it also holds us accountable as well to say, okay, it's out here, we need to make sure that we're continuing to do these things. And if there are any changes, we need to, keep them up to date, especially as it relates to things like, safety, our educational programs. And then especially the budget and bond, I think we're doing a good job with making sure the community is aware of what's going on with our budget, fiscally, and then as it relates to the bond. And Table Talks, the same thing. We launched that to increase engagement and encourage that dialogue between us, the Board of Trustees and campus and district staff members. I think some of the concerns that were identified again were expressed or conveyed through this graphic on what we're doing. I think training and development was one of the things, was a resounding theme. And then also I think it was interesting because when I looked at one of the surveys, I think it was the survey that we sent out to people who were no longer with the district. I think one of the things that they identified was high percentage was getting support from their supervisors
immediate
or
supervisors.
right. And so I didn't remember seeing that as a comment in here. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, that was such a high percentage of the reason why folks were leaving. But when we talk to folks, I don't know, if maybe we missed the mark a bit. I wasn't sure, but that was something that stood out to me when I looked at that data. But so again, this is the graphic that was created from Table Talk. So I think the information here is really good. And I think it's clear and concise, and everybody can kind of read it and understand. And it doesn't, I think it's very transparent. That's the word I'm looking for. It's very transparent. So as we continue to move from
Can we
good to,
back up a little bit?
yes, ma'am.
Even where it talks about communication,
Mm-hmm.
now we've got that blog out there. We've got the top 5 things. There's been a
Mhm.
lot of, as you can
Yeah.
indicate here, and we were able to continue to promote, let's talk,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
I think we've seen a lot of great things done from what we heard. I think we've actually
Right.
responded to what we've heard.
Do we have any sort, I was gonna kind of wait till the end, but it's kind of relevant right now. Do we have any sort of, like, a year-end summary? Like a board year-end summary, like here's all the things that
Of
your
all we
board
did.
managed to accomplish,
Yeah.
putting your, cause it kind of ties into communications, the table talks, the meetings with the board, just kind of putting more of that
Running tally.
the good, yeah.
It all needs to be
Good
part
things
of
that
that
we've
stuff.
done.
That
And then also we can do that as committee, as each committee to put down maybe 3 bullets on what we accomplished, what we set out to accomplish this year and what that looked like. And put it in a graphic, and it can go under here as well on the website, because this information is found under our board,
Right.
on our board page.
I know it's part of Lone Star governance. We will do that self-evaluation. When I do my self-evaluation on my job, I list my accomplishments.
Right.
And so I think it can be a part of our evaluation as we evaluate ourselves, include all of the accomplishments and things we've done. So that's a good call out, Trustee Corinne. You continue.
Your board is working for you.
Okay, and so as we continue to move from good to great, we actually had a meeting after our first board retreat that we had, so I updated a couple of these slides, because in that meeting, we determined the board is recommending.
The PAC meeting, yeah.
No, we actually had a community engagement committee meeting. Yeah, and so at that meeting, it was recommended that we add 3 community members to the committee. And then also add one principal from each feeder pattern, Westfield, Decaney, and Spring. And we can eliminate, because I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think we had several principals on there, but. So
We
this,
had an elementary, middle and high.
yeah,
It didn't work out as good. I
right,
think
right,
we really thought about the feeder pattern and the representation for the entire district.
right,
And remember in the community, like we only had Miss Townsend,
right.
who was the only community voice. And
Mhm.
so the committee really wanted to diversify it and make sure we were getting
True.
voices through
Mhm.
voices from the rest of the district. And she represents one little community we want to get.
Mhm. Right,
Yeah, so we're
right,
looking at
Yeah.
community members from other parts of. the
right,
district.
exactly,
Trying to-
exactly. And then also, I think that will eliminate us getting, the usual suspects as
Mhm.
well, I
Right.
think, yeah.
It's-
And,
It's great to have
Mhm.
consistent volunteers, but
Right.
you also want to open it up to other
right,
voices too.
because you tend to get the same
Feedback.
feedback, yeah.
Mhm.
And then one of the things we also talked about as a committee previously was making sure that we support and assist with the Girls and Boys Summit. I didn't have an opportunity to attend the Boys Summit, but I know at the Girls Summit, when I was sitting there and going through the classes, I've planned a lot of conferences and I really want to be a little bit more engaged in what that agenda looks like. Also, our speakers and our sponsors, I think we have a lot of opportunity with that summit. And y'all know, I'm always thinking when we're going to conferences and stuff, how we should have enough data, to be able to present the success of our Girls and Boys Summit. At the last conference we attended, there was a school down in West Texas, a small school, and they were talking about their program, and it's the Spanish name, and I don't know why I can't think of it.
Was it Señoras? No. What was it? Madrinas? No.
Uh,
Something like that,
Something
right?
like that, yeah. And then I remember I was thinking, but we're already doing that. And so I said, well, have y'all done this? And have y'all done that? I'm like, no, we hadn't thought about that. And then I said, well, we also do a boys summit. Oh, we hadn't thought about that. So I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna stop talking. Giving away all our ideas, but I'd love to see us present something like that. And when we're thinking about the conferences, making sure that we have an evaluation component as well, because I also think that our summits and things like that are sellable assets for sponsors to want to be engaged with what we're doing. And then also, I think we're making great strides on having more intentional meetings. We're not just meeting with the community just to say that we, to check this box. So I think we're doing a good job with that. And then also evaluating our outreach, what's working, and then areas of opportunity for us. And I think what we decided from that meeting is that we're going to, can you explain that a little bit better? I know it was one of the data that we already have. We're gonna look at that.
Mhm. And actually Shane just, did he send it to all of us?
Yeah,
We did. He sent us the, oh, yeah. Yeah. And Ms. Hodges thought the meeting was a 2-hour meeting. And we're all like, okay, let's go.
No, I don't like this, but
On fire. We're like, okay, it's 15 at 7:30. She's like, no, we're going to 8 o'clock. And it's like, it's from 6 to 7. But we're gonna take a look, like, I think, Mr. Ed, you said the K-12, it's surveys, insight surveys that we already have. Because the idea is, again, so much of this is mushy kind of thing, how do people perceive us and how do people feel about us? And so how can we measure? And so the team took a lot of time to talk about that. And so we're gonna look at the instruments that we have. Because there's some already there that says, I feel like I'm listened to or treated well when parents come in, they're asked that question as part of the survey. But also, and so we got copies of that, but also we have the opportunity, if there's something that we need to write in, to add
Yeah,
it
we
to
need
the
to-
survey that would measure more of our work.
Right.
But there's for students and teachers and parents that question, like, I feel I'm heard, listened to, valued. How are you treated when you come in? So those questions are the ones that we really want to look at. While we want to keep them constant, so we know how we were, because remember, we we hadn't done the survey since 2019, and so we started up last year. So we have last year's data as base, and then we have this year that we're getting ready to launch. And so we were looking, is there an opportunity for us to add any additionals? If we add any additionals, we won't have last year as a base, but this year would be considered as the base as we move forward and really be intentional in the work that we're doing to move like the needle on very specific levers. And the Boys and Girls Summit, we thought was really good for this committee to take up because it's really run from our family and community engagement team.
And
So
they need support.
They
I think they need some support, and I really see that being done on a larger scale. And I think about one of the projects that I worked on when I worked for Sisters Network, and I developed the Teens for Pink program, which was a program where teens led the charge in their family, teen girls, to talk to the women in their family about breast cancer and their breast cancer risk. And so I know that there's a lot of opportunities for that and for us to see that grow. And then also maybe even to partner with some neighboring districts. I mean, it would be huge to say we're having a North Houston Girls Summit hosted by Spring ISD, Aldine, and maybe Klein. So Klein
I'll
ISD.
give you a little story. So we, right before our very first one before the pandemic, we did it, and we partnered with Aldine, and it was great. And we had more of our girls participate. And so then when we reached out to them again, let's do it again, they're like, no, thanks, we're doing our own. And we're like, okay, fine.
Was that under Latonya? I mean, okay.
We did the boys with them and the girls. We did both of them, and our kids came out. I mean, like, and we got the buses, and you all saw how, all the kids come out. And so then last year, we said, we called them again. Yeah, we took over. And we called them again, they said they were doing their own. And we're like, okay, fine, we did our own, and we still did it great.
Yeah, we did.
No, we show up.
Yeah, we do. And I'm always thinking about it from a community and media perspective. I think our resources are so few. And if we can pull together and I think we would have a, greater impact. But definitely if they don't want us, then we'll go.
And maybe it's not just here, maybe we become the template school to teach other schools how to do it.
Right.
So even if they come one year and don't want to come the next year, then we did our job and now they're doing their thing.
That's a good suggestion too. So some of the fall activities, we did the Back to School Expo on the 29th. That's State Representative Symphonia Thompson there. She came and distributed school supplies. And then this is our guy from the Success Walk today. He came. I was so happy to see him. Yeah, so happy to see him. And so activities for the fall, we have Building Bridges on October the 30th, Table Talks December 4th. And then we are focusing on voter education and voter registration as well. And we'll have more information about that. I talked a little bit about it at the last month's board meeting, but we will, Trinita, Ms. Carroll is writing a grant because Houston Endowment actually has a grant that supports that. And so we would actually have a designated staff person to manage that project for us, when the grant, we are approved for funding for that. And then Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Omicron Tau Omega chapter is going to assist us with voter registration. We have several individuals that are sorority members that are deputized, so they're going to come and register our parents and our students to vote as well. But our goal with the voter education is to we want to make sure that we have informed voters when they go to the poll and that they know who they're voting for. We want to get access to some of the voter registration guides that are done. I know Community Impact puts together a good one. The League of Women Voters has a good one as well. We want to make sure that our parents are aware of who they're voting for and how their vote can impact what's going on in our community, you know, particularly as it relates to crime, education, all those things that we talked about the other night at the event.
And you know, I'm looking for it here, I think it's in my notes.
Uh-huh.
Ms. Hodges, if y'all remember, we said it was educate, activate, educate. Remember, educate, activate, I must.
And I don't have those notes, but yeah, our kind of our theme for this year is educate, activate. Oh God, it's good.
Yeah.
Advocate is something.
I gotta go back to each one.
And I came up with it. I did it, but I don't have those.
She
notes
didn't
with
even
me.
realize it as she was saying, and this, and it's like, that's it, that's our. thing
Yeah,
for the year.
advocate, educate,
It was educate first, 'cause we have to
Educate,
educate first. and then
something in the
something,
middle, and then advocate,
I
yeah.
wrote it down
Activate,
to.
activate, 'cause we gotta activate, we can't
Uh-huh.
just,
I wrote it down as
you know,
something else.
sometimes
Yeah.
we register people or we educate them, but we don't do the last part, which is
Mhm.
activate, like
Right.
do something, not
Yeah.
just sit and talk about it, but we gotta get action. And I think it's in my binder with we have it in our.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll have it,
I know Trinita and Shane have it in
You
there.
can do it Tuesday.
is it outreach, educate? Okay, I'm gonna figure it out, but anyway, thank you for bringing that up, I forgot about it, I would have definitely put it in the presentation. So, any questions about what we're doing, or
Well-
is there some areas that you'd like to see us,
Bring this Tuesday. You've got time on the agenda.
to do?
If you
Oh,
wanna
y'all know
present.
I don't like to present.
Okay.
and talk. I know y'all find it hard to believe, but I really don't, like, I'm still in the background to the foreground. I'm okay with that, yeah.
Question, but I have a comment that
Hmm.
your registration and education and then activate,
Mhm.
really important. I understand that studies have shown
Mhm.
that if you ask voters to identify which poll they're going to and how they're gonna get there,
Right.
they're much more likely to do it.
Right, right, definitely. Yeah, we talked about that too. I always remember back when I was younger and I lived in Illinois, we actually had on Sunday after church, the church buses took everybody to the polls. And as a little girl, I didn't understand the significance of that at the time. And so we've, gotten away from that, doing that. So, but yeah.
Legislation around that now that's changed the voting hours specifically targeting.
Mhm.
Souls to the polls.
Go to the polls, yeah, yeah. So, any other comments or questions? Okay, well, I'm gonna thank, oh, you did, oh, I'm sorry, they didn't, I looked at them.
Oh, I'm sorry. You just went so fast. I did want to come in and just say thank you. Done a lot of work last year, with some great, opportunities. And you've been doing an amazing job. So
Thank you, and I want to thank our committee and the district, Dr. Hina Host and her team, Ms. Carol and,
Shane.
Shane.
Supervisor.
But Shane. Yeah, Shane, I think he's really, taken some good initiatives, when we've talked about some things and been able to take it and kind of run with it, and I think that's critical, because we can do all this great work, but if we don't have the platform and the messaging is not getting out, then it's just a moot point, so
He's
we
really
really
good at
appreciate
that.
that.
Like
Mhm.
right after, he's like, well, this is what I found.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta get on it.
That's very helpful,
All
so,
right.
thank you all.
Thank you. So, at this time, the board is again gonna recess and go into a closed session in accordance with Texas Open Meeting Act, section 551.071, .072, and .074. The voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of the discussion in the closed meeting will take place after the board reconvenes in open session. And the time is now 1:40 p.m. Okay, we will now open and reconvene and resume the special call session of the Board of Trustees, and the time is now 5:00 p.m. We'll now address any items discussed during the closed session. Are there any motions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam President, I move that we adjourn our meeting at this time.
Second.
It's been moved by trustee Newhouse and seconded by trustee Correa to adjourn tonight's meeting. Is there any discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. We adjourn the meeting tonight at 5 o'clock PM.